So let's just quickly introduce ourselves. I know a lot of people know both of us, but Eric, you want to start?
Sure. My name's Eric Duell. Been a guest on Goldmine. What was the other thing we did about a year ago or so?
The gold
The Gold
standard.
Standard, right? Yeah. Sorry, I looked it up the other day, but uh, and so been colleague of yours for a long time. In my day work, I lead data commercialization for one of the country's largest audio companies. That includes AI. So that's why I think you and I get along so well. We operate similar spaces and have lots to talk about, like we have tonight.
Totally. Yep. And Jeremy Goldman. I would imagine you guys know me if you're paying attention to this. I have a podcast, Future Proof, and head of editorial and insights at Rethink Retail, where we cover retail. Imagine that. But like a lot of it is, the future of all things retail, including AI and media and how all these things intersect. And the nice thing about the gold mine is we get to talk about literally anything we feel like. And I know you had a really good list. I was like, maybe I can actually contribute to this list, and then I realized, wait, Eric has enough stuff that I would be like remiss if I didn't talk about everything on your list. So, like, I know you wrote something about creators and builders recently, so maybe we can start there.
Yeah, and just to make the point, like, we're talking here, but we also talk in real life. So there's us at the park a couple of months ago, like it was the end of May, beginning of June, just out on a Sunday afternoon.
I need
We
to
didn't
work on
bring
my
we didn't bring
posture.
we didn't bring the checkers or the chess, but it was a lot of fun getting
Next time, let's
together.
bring checkers though. I think we
Okay.
got to bring checkers back.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. We just have to remember the rules, right? Should be fairly straightforward. Yeah. So one of the things we were talking about is this idea as we move into more of an AI driven world. Um, and I'm not talking about that like from necessarily a creative standpoint or like writing standpoint. Of course, a lot of people are using it that way. More people than admit it if you look at the studies.
Oh
But
yeah.
I think that there's this opportunity now with what we can do with coding and actual development, where we're likely to see creators become builders. And so my theory about, or one of my theories about AI is that on the positive side is that it allows people not only to converse with the technology instead of writing code, but also gives them what I think of as superpowers because now they can make the technology work for them. So maybe you were an artist before and you could paint or draw or take pictures or write or whatever. But maybe you just didn't have the affinity or hadn't had the time to learn how to work with technology. But now, because you can interact directly with it and ask it to do things, that opens up potentially a whole new world. So that's where I was coming from. We haven't really talked about this in detail before, so I'm curious about your take on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing about this is that everybody does think about what is lost whenever we move to like a new era. But I mean, I'm trying to think about like a good example. Like in hundreds of years ago, if you wanted to be like a creator, you needed like a patron or something like that,
Mm,
right? Like it was very difficult, and you had to be kind of like almost like arguably like a suck up to like somebody who had a lot of money to support you. And now you don't have to do that. So there's actually benefits in some way. And now I mean, I feel like this is a little bit of what you're getting to, but like, let me know if I'm barking up the wrong tree or just building on it. No pun intended. But the idea that there's like a few things that I don't even know if I can honestly say like I'm coding them or I'm not coding them, but I'm putting some things on Claude or I'm creating them on Claude. And I was a developer like 20 years ago, but I'm
mm,
definitely not one now. But now I can be again. And now I'm judged by my creativity because anybody who has the creativity can build something versus before you could have had all the creativity in the world and then building this thing was totally out of reach. So basically there is this benefit, there is this new positive that maybe people weren't counting on. Like it's
mhm.
actually a good thing for a lot of people. So
Well, I think if you just take someone who's a good idea person, like I think the hurdle is always You can talk about it or you can try to show it. And of course, we all respond to things different ways, but I've always found that being able to show the idea is often quite compelling, right? So in your case, for example, maybe, you know a little bit about development because you were working in that space 20 years ago, I think is what you said. But um, you know enough to put together the idea and be able to like get it to the point where other people could see it and go, yeah, that is worth doing, or I see where you're going. So maybe even if you don't end up, shipping something, it's a benefit to be able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, is it as simple as kind of like saying prototyping is a lot easier, like building something and then see like, is this anything? To just borrow a famous phrase, you're able to do that without investing a whole lot. And I mean, I also think that when you think about like a lot of different creator content on YouTube or on TikTok or on Reels, but, and maybe this is like I'm borrowing this from watching my kids watch a lot of content. Is like there are people who build immersive experiences on Roblox, and then they create content around it to show everybody, check out what I did. And
Hmm.
the same thing is true for like Minecraft, and or they'll build something using like to take like the Claude or ChatGPT example, like they'll code something, but then they'll create a tutorial around the thing that they're building. So, like the building
Mm.
itself becomes the content or the
Yeah.
act of creation. It's very easy to document it versus think about if you were building, a skyscraper, 50 years ago, you had no means of really documenting the whole thing and saying like people might want to watch this so that they can learn.
Hmm.
So as a result, my guess is that we're going to all start to like iterate a lot faster because if you need to figure something out, there's probably a creator who's already built something that you can follow and then learn from.
Yeah, I find in my own work that I often end up building my own tools to solve a problem that I had. And so, of course, then, I want to share that with my team and, for work things, my daily work, of course, that's going to stay in the company, but there may be things that may be in the work that I do here in my own Substack or my own creative endeavors that I decide, oh, well, that's a great solution. Maybe no one has that and could share that. So that's potentially something that could benefit all of us.
Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, I know that this wasn't something that was like really officially on your list, but I'll throw it at you anyway, just because this is how we normally talk and just riff off
Mm,
of things. But this is something I maybe have mentioned to you before, but I'm kind of imagining not necessarily a dystopian future, but a future where now, and I read something the other day about like there's a new influencer class at some college where like you can, you know, major in becoming an influencer or something like that. And forgetting the source. And I'm not surprised to see things like that, but I'm kind of wondering what percentage of people will actually make all of their living being a creator. And
yeah.
I imagine these creator builder types in the future, it's going to be for most people like a small subset of all of their income. Like that's why I've basically decided that I'm not going to like really monetize my whole like the stuff that I create because I'd rather just create a lot of stuff, learn from it, and
Yeah.
then get a better job. Which like I basically employed all this stuff in at my job, and there's no way that like I would have made as much money over the years if I was a full time creator. So I just decided not to do that. I'd rather have kids. I'd rather they eat. So yeah, do you think that this is kind of like one of those things where everybody will have like, like 3% of their income on average come from being a creator, but very few people are like doing it full time?
Yeah. I think that for the vast majority of folks, this is not going to be the way they make their living. I think even if you look at the on Substack, once you get out of the very top tier, I mean, just think about all the people, and I'm talking about that, but it could be Medium, any of the other platforms, right? When you get out of the top tier of that, there's a really long tail of folks that are making a little bit. And I think actually, the good part of that is now the barrier to entry is lower. So there are lots of voices that, I'm reading that I certainly wouldn't have known about or heard about that I can appreciate and support. Um, but I think, the flip side of that is with so much content, kind of like cable was, remember, like you ended up with like 400 channels, like what to watch. I mean, I think we all can identify this is not news to anybody, but there's more to, sample than we could possibly have time to do. So, and there is a limit in the time of the day, like you said, you want to have, be with your family and make dinner and go play checkers in the park, and that kind of thing. So, um, I think the way it's going to shake out is kind of like the way you've laid it out. That there are, at least the way we see it right now, I think that most people won't be making their living, but if they can make some and some people can get discovered, then I think that that's good. I think the economic question, though, that is kind of sitting with people is who's benefiting from all that extra content creation. So I think it is true that overall, like we're sitting here basically, you know, having a TV show, like, if we roll back and we're a broadcast or, cable or whatever, that's, we can argue about the technical quality, like do we have music and intros and all that, but it's really about us talking, but we're producing
Yeah.
this show, and the cost to do that is really minimal. Like you could have gotten an account today, set this up, and there we go.
But well, and this is like a whole, not like criticism of Substack, it's just like a criticism by nature of like all the platforms, is that you make it, and I don't even know if Substack would want us to call them a platform in the same way as like these mega platforms. But the point is that you build something where everybody individually benefits enough to do this stuff for free or, subsidized based off their own time, like with
Mm,
UGC, user generated content folks,
yeah.
that everybody does it, and it's a big enough group of people that we can never like unionize and say, oh, we're not getting enough value, so here's what you have to do. So like governments essentially have to look out for people and say you're ripping people off. And like the government has like enough problems on its hand. That's not going to be a priority. So I
Mhm.
don't blame them for not saying like, let's start there. But yeah, there is obviously like a bit of a problem in that we or it's a problem or it's not a problem. Like these platforms will grow and they'll employ people, and I have a good time talking to you. So like, do I really care that much about me not getting rich off of it? Sure, and I wouldn't get rich off of it anyway. But I don't think that there are people though who get left behind as part of like the whole dichotomy here.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I think that there also is a difference economically between the platforms that have advertising embedded and those that don't. And so we may see long term something, kind of fall out and maybe diverge in those ecosystems, but seems maybe it's a little too early to kind of see how that plays out long term.
What do you think about the dark forest private space kind of thing that you
Yeah.
had been, riffing on? Because I feel like that'd be an interesting, transition here.
Yeah. So just to kind of cap or recap to that concept. So there's this idea. I mean, when we go back to the beginning of the internet, so like late 90s, early 2000s, I think those of us that were participating in that, many of us felt like this would lead to a new set of relationships, right? Like I can now email my friend that's in Germany or whatever, and we can talk and be in touch. And it's not like every couple of years, maybe we'll chat. Of course, back then, like, making a long distance phone call was really expensive, unlike today. And there was no, WhatsApp or no FaceTime or anything like that. Um, so I think the theory was, a lot of people believed that this would bring us closer together. But of course, since then, we've seen what's happened to the internet. It's become very, of course, very commercially oriented, and now you have a lot of very large platforms. And there's an argument that you know that that many of those the dominant players are really just trying to figure out how they can monetize content or you know basically accrue power. I'm just stating this as kind of some general thinking in this space. And so and with that and the loss of friction to participating, which means anyone can troll you, anyone can say anything. We've heard all about the challenges of what happens when, with deep fakes and all that, that basically the public internet can be a scary place for a lot of people.
Hmm.
Um, and so there's this theory that really the next generation of action will happen in what are called like the dark forests. So these are basically private spaces that get created in the public internet, but that basically you get invited into because your friends are there, your followers are there, people that care about the same topic as you are there.
So wait, so like Mosaic is a dark forest space, right? Because
Yeah, you could consider it that. Maybe you should explain what Mosaic is.
digital networking group that Eric and I are a part of, how we met originally. So
Yeah.
that and like a private WhatsApp that's like quote unquote curated, or a
Yeah.
Discord server, or like Slack that not everybody can join. All of
Yeah.
those would qualify, I think, right?
Yeah, and it's not, just to give testimony to, like, the way Mosaic works and the way you've led that along with the other leaders, it's not like you have to pass a test to come, you just have to come and participate and show interest and then be there and be a good citizen, right? And I don't know how many people are on the list now, but it's maybe a couple thousand at
I
this
don't know.
point, is
I
that
would
right? A
have to
couple
take a
100 I
look.
it's more than a couple hundred, it's pretty big.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's true. I'd have to take a look exactly. But it's the hard thing is I mean, I really love this idea and I think it would be really cool. And I think that part of the tricky thing, the irony, I guess you could say, is that at least for Mosaic, this was something where I kind of said, "Oh, it's going to be like the anti," and I thought of like a few different groups that I'd been part of where they had like this whole monetization and scaling, you know, like they had a business plan. And I was
Yeah,
like, let's just do this where it's like good people can meet other good people, and they'll see what happens. And I tried to do everything the exact opposite way of how everybody else would do it. And then what you kind of find out is, well, if you can't, like, you're going to do it part time, out of the goodness of your heart in your spare time while you're still trying to make money, so that ultimately what happens is that everybody, I think, who run something like this, like Discord, for instance, Discord does cost money to run, like they need a business model. And then there becomes more of an impetus to get more and more people on there. And then you, at some point, run into the issues that like bright forests. What's the opposite of a dark forest? Bright
I
jungle.
think it's well, yeah, um, well, it's definitely being out in the spotlight, and where everyone can see you, which, in some ways is good, but it also means there aren't a whole lot of barriers to people getting to you if they don't like what you say or, whatever. Um, so I think you're right. Like Mosaic is a kind of a dark forest, and I hadn't thought about that before, but that's a good analogy or a good like parallel.
What do you think about a Facebook group that is like listed on Facebook? Everybody can see it. You still have like an admin who has to approve. You're building on somebody else's property.
Yeah,
And on one hand, you can say it's closed and it's a dark forest and it's curated or whatever. The other hand is, like, for instance, Facebook. If I really like Facebook groups. They're really helpful in a lot of ways. But then you'll click somebody's profile for the group and
yeah,
it'll show you like their interaction within the group, and then it'll be like, do you want us to view their entire profile? And then it moves from like dark forest to the opposite very quickly.
yeah,
And then it makes me think about, like, there are a lot of like these private WhatsApp groups, but all it takes is Meta to say, hey, we are going to change the way that those operate. And then they don't operate the same way anymore. So you don't,
yeah.
and I'm just thinking about like, how do you do this in a way where you have total control and you don't lose control because a company decides that now they need to monetize that service?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges with those kinds of groups is, and you kind of said it, like someone has to be in control. Um, and a lot of the structures in the digital space that I've seen rely on there's someone who's an owner of the space of the content. I mean, we even have that in Substack, right? So like you have the gold mine, I have, mine, do good by doing better. And we're kind of the primary there. And there's not an easy way for you to make me a co-owner of that. And let's say you were monetizing, let's say you did charge for subscriptions. Now what do we do? Like if I write 5 articles and you write 3, do we split it that way? Or right now it actually all goes to you if you're the owner, and then we have to figure out how to divvy it up or whatever
And what if
the deal is.
my articles are bad and yours are great?
Right.
And you
Yeah.
write a lot less, but they're amazing, you know?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah,
Right.
you
So
can.
there are those problems in those spaces.
Yeah. No, I think it's I mean, I also it is something that you were saying that made me think a little bit about being like a Substack creator. Is here's a hot take: am I basically like a bad steward of Substack or like the creator economy if I'm on something like Substack and I'm just trying to share knowledge that I have from all these other interactions, and I do it, and my goal is not to make money because I don't need it, like, and I'm not that motivated by money, and my life would be better if I was, but I'm not. And am I basically like a scab? Am I kind of, or in the future, if you're doing things for free, will people throw rocks at you because they'll be like, you're making it harder for other people to make one? Like, because at some point, I could, in theory, be successful enough at my other stuff to say, I don't care that much about money. I'm going to do like high quality content. I'll hire a few people and I'll do all this stuff and I'm not going to charge for any of it. And we've all had a situation where we want to read an article, we can't get through, but then somebody else doesn't have a paywall on the same topic. So then you read that one. And it's an interesting thought about like, I don't want to change the way that I'm operating, but like maybe at one point, if there are people like you or I, do we become like, uh, I guess like, do we hurt everybody else who's just trying to like make a living fully off of being a creator?
And I think it depends on why we're doing it. It seems like it's a complicated dynamic, right? Because
That's why I'm asking you because you're smart.
well,
I'm not going to ask you easy
you're smart
questions.
too. Oh no, come on.
Yeah, but I don't have the
Uh,
answer. I don't.
oh,
I I, I think that there'll be my hope is, I guess, there'll be too many people like me who will be doing stuff for free that you won't be able to throw rocks at us. Like if it's only like 1% of society that's doing really amazing content and it's all free, and that's fine. But like right now, there's enough free stuff that I do kind of think like it's going to be really hard for the people who charge to command their price point. Like that's
yeah,
better, but is it like $120 a year better? And what amount do they need to charge to have this be like a full time hustle for them?
yeah. Well, so what I've seen in terms of the research that I've done is that really like turning on subscribers, like revenue and subscriptions for
Oh, I
most
thought you
folks
meant
doesn't.
like turning them on. Okay, so
Yeah,
got it.
no, 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 no. So yeah,
Different.
turning on
Not
the
that kind of
ability
show.
to monetize, to accept a payment for a subscription or whatever. Um, that generally that works when you have a large number of followers. Um, on my Substack, people can take subscriptions, but I have the paywall down. So it really is, and I've spent some time early in my career working in public media, and so I have a little bit of that ethos, like maybe a little faith that if people like what I'm doing and they find value in it, that if there are 100 people, a couple will chip in, and I've found that to be the case so far. But I'm not, I'm it doesn't it's not profitable. you know, I'm doing that partially, and this may be just my journey, but I started, writing because I wanted a place to explore some things I was thinking about. And so for me, and it kind of goes back to the point about like is there an intrinsic benefit for you? And I think for a lot of people, just being able to talk about their craft or their art or their practice, or like in my case, those things, but also just stuff that I felt like I wanted to talk to someone about and just kind of get out. And I think like 2 years into that for me, um, the last piece I wrote was all about like that journey and what I learned in the process. And I think I'm a better person for having done that. So for me, that's, that's the payoff I'm getting. Maybe one day I'll have 7,000 subscribers, like another Substack that I subscribe to, with, some kind of gold color something, but,
Yes, it's me. Okay. But I think that, well, yeah, I mean, I was also like a content creator type of person for a longer time period. And I mean, it's also kind of funny because as you were talking, I realized, well, you're kind of like I'm totally simplifying, but like the AI techie who writing can be their outlet. And I'm like the writer who I'm like building a whole bunch of like AI skunkworks projects because I can now, you know?
mm,
So that's the thing that I do. That's my outlet. I
mm.
actually even thought about, and I might have mentioned to you, but I would probably have written a third book by now, except for the fact that I transitioned from writing being my side hustle to writing being the thing that like I'm largely doing during the day. There's nothing that you want to do at the end of the day than like write some more when you've been writing the whole day. So
So here's what's interesting about that parallel. So, uh, yeah, as I think if people have read my stuff, they will know, like, especially at the beginning, I talked about how you were a bit of an inspiration to me to do this because you invited me in to write for, the gold mine. Um, and so that I kind of worked through like my willingness to get out there and put myself out there and like get my ideas, have the confidence to hit publish. Another thing that happened as I was thinking through all of this is I had met with a ghostwriter, because I used to teach at university. I've done a lot of things like about like passing on knowledge to others, and people have said to me like, "You should write a book," and I just haven't because I always thought like, "Well, what would I actually write about that anyone cares about?" And this
well,
ghostwriter,
that's assuming, by the way, that most writers write a book that anybody cares about.
oh well, that's true.
Probably
Yeah.
like eighty
Well,
percent of them people don't,
I,
but fine.
should I ask you about your books, your two that you wrote?
Some people cared, but like I
Yeah.
mean,
Okay.
no, it's I had very good luck in terms of like the timing of my first book, and then the second one, like I thought was actually good, and then it didn't do as well, which is also fine. But like I think the key thing is if you're trying to, I don't know, a lot of it is when you're thinking about like what are the numbers you're trying to hit. I always thought of that as being like this weird random thing, obviously you don't want four people to read your book that you spent 10 years writing, and it's maybe not like a good return. But for like my first book, Going Social, I always remember the story about this person who wrote in from Indonesia who started some kind of like viral, quasi-viral food truck type of thing that then it became like their family's business, and they started using some of the ideas and tenets that they read in the book. And then I thought, wow, that's incredibly cool. And then I thought, well, what if there was like no other value generated other than that? Isn't that
Mm,
actually like something good, you know? So I mean, so 400, you're not going to sell like a million or 2 million copies of like the average business book, so you can't put that expectation in your head or you're automatically going to be a failure.
mm.
But I mean, I think that if you're putting something out and impacting a whole bunch of different people, I mean, if you impact 10 people, was that a good return? Probably not, because you probably could have spent that year, 18 months that you worked on it to impact 15 people, 20 people, like more than that, right? But there is a certain point where it's also, to what level do you impact people? Like if you wrote a self-help book and then there's, 20 people who write you and say they turned their life around because of that, and now their life has meaning, I mean,
Yeah.
if that's kind of valuable. I don't know why people would say that that's not, just because it's not like a certain number. I know I totally like took that in a random
Ah,
direction, but that's how we roll.
I do think that, you know, for people that are builders or creators or artists, a lot of that motivation is about kind of self-expression and personal journey that goes along with creating. So, you have to also think about the impact that would have on you going through that process. And certainly I think that, for each of us to be able to have uh, that that vessel or that method or path to self-reflection and learning. I think that's I think look around the world. I think we could use more of that. So if that ends up, maybe that's the knock-on effect that actually we should have is, by writing, I'm doing self-reflection, I'm learning something about myself, and I can be a better person. I don't know if we could all do that a little bit. I don't think that'd be so bad. We'd probably be a lot better. Um,
Yeah.
there, yeah, go ahead.
No, I disagree.
Uh, there was one thing I wanted to come back to on the dark forest side before we kind of close out that topic. So there's a company called MetaLabel, and they're basically building a platform to allow people to co-create and co-monetize and co-publish and co-distribute. So it's not any association with Meta, the company, but it's just MetaLabel. So if you're interested in that, um, you could look them up. But they also have created what they call DFOS, which is the Dark Forest Operating System. So it's taking that meta label concept and uniting that with creating space, to create dark forests on the internet. So that is a place where you and I could team up. We could write a book together, create art or whatever, and they're providing tools to handle the monetization, the publishing, and the distribution. So it is a cool, like that's the first e-commerce um, implementation, I think, in the spirit of this dark forest concept. We'll see where it goes. Last I talked to one of their partners, they had a waiting list to get in there, but it's an interesting idea. So I hope to see where they can take it.
That is really cool. What's is this the Yancey Strickler from?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So
No,
Yancey was one of the co-founders
of
of Kickstarter.
Kickstarter. Yeah,
Yeah.
Jinx.
And yep, there you go. And so now he's involved with MetaLabel, and also a concept called A Corps, which is we have B Corps, we have LLCs and that kind of stuff. So I believe in Colorado, they just got passed a law that allowed artists to set up their own corporations, which are designed to help artists overcome some of the, structural challenges of being in a partnership or an LP or an LLC. So
The idea was first introduced at the TED conference in Vancouver, Canada in April 2025. I really want to go to Vancouver, by the way. I know we have to go in like a minute or two, but I really want to go. Have you been?
I've not been to Vancouver. No.
Rethink is actually throwing an event there in a few
Mm.
months. So it's a little bit
You,
outside your wheelhouse, but I'm kind of hoping that they send me. So fingers crossed.
you were just in Canada a few months ago, right?
I was in Canada 3 times for 3 different events in a 6-week period, but it was all
Yeah.
Toronto. So it's like, send me other places. I want to go to, or do you have any travel coming up anytime soon?
We had our travel. We were in London to see BTS. So that's a passion in this household.
That's right. I
And
forgot about that. Yeah, we have that in
yeah,
common because my daughter loves them.
yeah, and we're going to see a couple more concerts here in the U.S. coming up. But that was our vacation, which so with our daughter, um, you know, graduating high school, going to college, and so on. There was a period of time where that was really hard, but now things are a little bit easier. So, yeah, it was 10 years since we had taken a real vacation, like for extended period of time. So we're able to do that at the over the beginning of July. So that was a lot of fun.
Nice. I
So
have to do more of that.
hopefully you get to Vancouver.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Absolutely. Well, should we call it a night? Not that I probably should eat dinner. It's like 9 p.m. I should be a mature adult.
Yeah. Well, so it's good. This has been great to talk to you, as always is. Uh, Usually we're walking around the city, whether it's me with you in New York or you down here in Philly. By the way, your turn to come down. We have to find
Yes, I know.
another place to get cheesesteaks or whatever is going to be on your
LeBron might
menu.
not. LeBron might
Uh,
not want to live in Philly, but I do because there's so much
yeah,
good food. So yeah.
yeah. Well, you're welcome
What?
anytime.
Yeah. No, it definitely should, and we should do this again in person.
Yeah, that's great. So thanks for the invitation. Good to talk to you. Hope
Thanks all for
throughout the
watching.
yep.
You guys rock.
All right. See ya.
Yeah.